Hey folks, Prof Psych here, another research methods video for you on probability and significance and how they relate to type 1 and type 2 errors. Let's have a look straight away at this concept of probability then. Probability, folks, is this idea, it's a measurement of the likelihood of an event occurring, okay? Now we can give this a numerical or statistical number, okay? Let's say this, all right? Statistical score and measure 0, okay? Means there is no chance that an event will happen, okay? It is statistically impossible. For example, me getting to the moon in 1 second. It cannot happen. Statistically impossible, we give it a score of 0, okay? Now, we can also look at this as there is 0%. Sometimes we're talking percentages, 0% of me getting to the moon in a second, okay? Now, if we are statistically certain, right, that something will occur, we give it a maximum value of 1. Sad situation, but I am statistically certain that one day I will die, okay? We could, of course, also represent this as a percentage. We are 100% certain of that occurrence. Now, let's think about probability in psychology though, okay? It's maybe not as straightforward as some of those two examples I just gave, okay? Can we ever be 100% certain, particularly if we're doing an experiment or we've looked at a correlation? Are we 100% certain, for example, that this independent variable caused the change in this dependent variable? Well, we cheat a little bit here. Cheat's the wrong word. In psychology, psychologists use the p is less than 0.05. What it means is this, okay? The probability of our results of an experiment, for example, being due to chance is less than 5%. Put this in other terms, it says that 95% of the time we think we found a significant difference or relationship depending on what we're measuring. There's only a 5% chance that the results were down to chance, okay? Now, p is less than 0.05 is the generally accepted level of probability used in psychology. Let's examine this more, okay? Why do we use this level of probability, this level of statistical significance? It avoids psychologists making what we call type 1 and type 2 errors. We'll come back to that, okay? Type 1 and type 2 errors, okay, is when we accept or reject the wrong hypothesis. Now, why might we do that? How could we end up from an experiment taking our results and accepting or rejecting the wrong hypothesis? Okay, probably because we've used a different level of probability from the p is less than 0.05, and therefore that probability level was too strict or too lenient. Okay, let's examine these more. Let's imagine that I use the p is less than 0.01, okay? Here, what we're saying then, the probability that the results were due to chance is less than 1%, okay? Or we're 99% certain there was a significant difference or relationship found. So we can see there, we're giving a much sort of lower level of kind of giving it down to chance. We're being more strict in our expectation of significance, all right? But then let's look the other direction. P is less than 0.10. Here, the probability of the results being down to chance is less than 10%, or we're 90% certain that our finding was a significant difference or relationship. So we're being more lenient in this example, okay? So let's jump back to what a type 1 and type 2 error is. These you have to just learn, okay? When a psychologist rejects the null hypothesis in error, it's an error, okay? So in rejecting their null hypothesis, they of course are going to accept the experimental hypothesis. This was an error, let's think it through. In reality then, there was not a significant relationship or difference between what was being investigated, so they should have accepted the null hypothesis, but they didn't. They rejected it. That's an error. It's a type 1 error. Okay? When could this happen then? When is it likely to happen? When we move away from our accepted p is less than 0.05. For example, when we run the statistical test using the lenience level, too lenient, of p is less than 0.1, or the 10% level, okay? Essentially, we're allowing a greater degree of leniency than we should have, all right? Now let's look at type 2 errors. Type 2 errors, when a psychologist rejects the experimental hypothesis in error, it's an error, so they're accepting the null hypothesis in error, okay? So in reality, what we're saying here is there was a significant relationship or difference found, okay, in the results from what was investigated, all right? So that the psychologist should have accepted the experimental hypothesis, but didn't. They rejected it. Now, you're probably guessing already, how has this happened? Okay, well, it's happened here. Again, they've tested at a probability level that is not, the p is less than 0.05. In this case, they've run a statistical test being too strict, or too stringent is a word often used. And they've used the probability is less than 0.01. In other words, they're only allowing for 1% of the time the results being down to chance, okay? Rather than at the normal, allowing 5% of the time. The p is less than 0.05. Okay. Now, summarize all that, folks. You pause your video now. Can you fill in these quick gaps? If you can, you understand, and you've maybe already got in memory type 1, type 2 errors, and how we avoid it. Good. I'm now going to quickly give you the answers. All right. Type 1 errors, when a psychologist accepts their experimental hypothesis, but they should accept their null hypothesis. It occurs when they use the 10% or p is less than 0.1 significance level. Type 2 errors, when a psychologist accepts their null hypothesis, but they should accept their experimental hypothesis. When does it occur? When they use the 1% or p is less than 0.01 significance level. How do we avoid that? We avoid making a type 1 or type error in psychology. A psychologist must use the 5% or p is less than 0.05 significance level. As always, folks, pause the video, make notes, think about it, give yourselves examples of experiments to think about. This p is less than 0.05 is really important as an accepted standard in psychology as we move to the next area of study. I'll say goodbye for the moment. Keep your eyes open for that next video. I'm going to start looking about what we do with data and how we run them through those statistical tests we've talked about before. Keep working hard, folks. It'll always be there. It'll get easy.